Again, Shaked, and now I will show you my repository about how to convert HTML to random function. So basically I wrote article which I will link below, and then you will see how can you take an HTML and convert it into a Vue render function, as you see here, that you know and love. Let's get started. So basically I created a small Flask server container which will create a small server that you can send an HTML content to it, and it will serve you back the JSON render function format. So basically I will show you how to use it. Pressing here, run and debug, Flask. This will run the app. Make sure you have all the requirements installed. So basically now it's running. You have two examples. One, when you have the Jupyter notebook file, and you can see the example of the actual HTML. We are reading the HTML file just so we have some content to send to the server. This is the HTML file. It's basically just a div. So we are reading the file. We are calling localhost. You can see that the first thing is the tag, which is a div. And then we have the attributes, which is none, because this div doesn't have any attributes. And here we have the actual content. So the content, as you see here, is a JSON format, which look very similar to a render function. You have the same keys, the same basically everything. All you need to do is create a recursive function that will use this content. Okay. Also, you have an example of a Vue render function that's using this content. Basically, it's very simple. You are just getting the content and h. H is when you have the render function, you have the create element. So we're just passing the create element into the handle content function. So we are passing the content, okay, which is the list of all the elements. Then we're checking if this is a string, because render function can handle a string easily. We are just returning the string. If this is array and the content is greater than 0, then we're starting the recursive function. Okay, else we return an empty string. So what is it doing? We are going over the content and we're returning a new array format. For each element in the array, okay, we are checking the content again. Okay, if it's a string, we're returning a string, etc. But if it's not a string, okay, we're first of all creating the attributes from the elements, l.attributes. The order here, it's not important. You can also specify an order, creating a counter and incrementing the order by 1 if you want anything like that, which I have in the other example. Anyway, so the attributes, you're creating the attributes. You can add your custom attributes on click events, which I will usually you will see here. And okay, and then I'm checking again if the content, okay, if there is a content, and if there is, if it's an array, okay, and its length is greater than 0. Pay attention that I'm using the question mark symbol to make sure that if it's null, so it's not gonna cause me a runtime error. Cannot read property length of undefined or content of undefined. Basically, we're returning an h of the tag and this function. Okay, this is why it's recursive. We are calling the same function with the content and h. Okay, but if it's not an array, okay, we have here a couple of stuff. If there is an iframe, okay, in my case we needed to use it. So if an iframe and the source included Facebook, so we're returning a custom Facebook component. Okay, this can be very useful to you when you need some kind of tweaking functionality between the types of component. And pay attention, it will be just the name of the component, which I already registered here. So just the name of the component and the content you need. If it's an image, you can add an attribute, let's say attributes on click and whatever event, add custom event, etc. and else if all this, the content is not an array and it's not an iframe or an image, then we're just returning the tag with or a span if there is no tag from some reason, or a span, and that's it. I'm returning the content is a string, and here it was an array. If you have any question, you can drop them down below. How the actual convert on function is working. Okay, we initialize the HTML converter, we're adding its HTML and return the JSON object. Okay, so how does this object is working? So we have the initial function, which is empty. It's init with HTML. Here you're adding the content. Okay, this can be changed to HTML here. Then we are passing it to this function. Now we have the parse HTML content function. So we initialize a beautiful soup object, which basically beautiful soup is a really awesome library from Python. I will show you just the basic. It's handling HTML content, XML, etc. It can pass it very easily to actual object. Okay, you can see here, this is documentation. Highly suggest look at it and you will understand much more easily what I'm doing. So I created this soap object, okay, and pay attention, yes, I'm declaring the variable name because it will be much easier for me down the road. So when I'm looking at the object, I know, oh, it's a beautiful soap object. So here I have the list of the tags I want to delete. Sometimes when you have the HTML file, you have some tags you want to delete. Let's say I have the head, style, script, whatever. Okay, or non-script. I'm going through the list for each object in this list, for each tag. Okay, I'm just selecting all the elements which has this tag and extracting them. Okay, extract means deleting them from the soap object over all the elements. Okay, and running a custom function. Okay, for each element here, first of all, I have an example of how to change a tag name programmatically, meaning let's say in Vue or Next, you don't have an A tag, you have a Next link, so you can just link and it will be changed. So I have an example. My example was when we have an A tag which have the attributes of Twitter, we want to show a custom component for it. So we have here the custom component for Twitter, and if you will see, we are using it programmatically. So meaning if here, okay, the tag will be Twitter component, or here the tag will be Twitter component, it will just work, okay, because this is the same name and it already has the attributes. This is an example, okay, and then you have the remove attributes. Okay, the attributes you want to actually remove. So and here is reserve properties, meaning for the iframe, I want to reserve the width and the height. Which tag I want to remove? Okay, I'm going through the attributes. Okay, if there is attributes. So if there is attributes, if the tag name is in a reserve properties and tag to remove in a reserve property tag.name, meaning if there is the tag name, okay, is in here in the dictionary, meaning the iframe. So I'm checking also about the property, if the property is inside the reserve property dot iframe, if there is width or height. If it is, continue, so meaning skipping to the next new loop, and if not, I'm just moving and removing this attribute by using delete. Okay, so then after it, I'm adding it to the object with self.soap, creating a copy of this object, and then I'm checking if the body is none, meaning from some reason the HTML was empty, or after all this cleanup there was no HTML. So if the body is not existing, just returning the string of it. But if it exists, meaning format it as a pretty HTML, just so I can save it and it will look nicely. And I'm replacing the doc type HTML into an empty string, because when I'm using other function with it, it will be for me much easier to work without this doc type and removing it each time. As you see here, there's no actual head or doc type before, just like the HTML body. This is the function. You have two more functions here. You have soap to HTML, meaning I create this, I'm taking this self.soap, and convert it into JSON. So I have push to array. You're taking the SOAP object and an empty array as initialization. Here I'm showing if you want to save the result into a JSON file, you also can. Basically, you can comment. I will comment this out after, just for an example. And then after you have the result, you are returning the result just in index.fs. And the reason for that, I will show you, is because when you have this result, because of the way the push to array function works, it's basically returning you an array of objects. Meaning, and I don't want to each time go to in the first time to go to the index 0 and then getting this array would be just easier for me to immediately get this object. So now, okay, I'm returning this and you have saved to file, which is pretty straightforward. And the push to array, okay, this is a bit complicated function, but I'm sure you can get through it. You can send me messages down below and I will try to help. So basically, we're taking the elements, meaning the SOAP elements, and the content, which should to be a list. So as you saw here, when you initialize this function, we're passing it this empty object of an empty array. So first of all, we're checking if it's a string. Okay, if it is a string, I'm checking if it is an empty string. After I'm stripping everything, there is no empty lines, nada. So if it's not, okay, if both of these are true, meaning now I'm checking if the content is a list. If it's a list, I'm adding to the list. I'm basically expecting a list that will look as the following, which have this content. So I'm appending to this list as the following. If not, if it's a dictionary, meaning the dictionary will look as the follow. You have, this is our two options we have. We have either a list with a dictionary, or we have a dictionary with a list. So in each one, we're just appending the element, the string, and it will look as the following after it. So if it's not a string, now it's become complicated. So we are going through all the contents. Okay, if you will look at the beautiful SOAP documentation, you will see that the contents return us all the children this SOAP element has. So we're going through all the content and we're checking for each type. If it's a string, if it's a tag, and that's it. So we have a string and we have a tag. So if it's a string, we're doing basically the same thing as we did here. Okay, but if it's a tag, we're checking if we got here in the content an empty array first. If it is empty, we adding a div tag with content and empty attribute. Okay, after that, we're checking if the content is 1, the content length is 1. And if it is, and the type of the content is in index 1 is a string, meaning we're just having an empty element which have only one property, which is string. Sometimes I got it because of the old API I had. So you have it here. If it is like this and the type of content is dictionary, as you already saw here, then I'm adding it straightly. I'm adding the content. Basically, these 3 lines is just to avoid having a nesting render function, meaning I don't want to have something like that. Meaning if I won't have any other children to it. Meaning if there is only one child, I want to have it look like this, which the content itself will be string, just will be a bit easier on the computer, and I think performance wise and look wise it will be much cleaner. So this is the only reason. But you can basically remove it and it will still work just as fine. And then if it is a list, we are doing the same thing. But if it's not, meaning it have multiple children, So I'm checking again the type. If it is a type, I'm calling this function again, push to array, meaning it will take these elements, okay? It will take the current element, and the tag will be the tag name and the attributes, but we're basically gonna do a recursive function that will call this nesting property. So you will see it on this HTML page, meaning we're basically first going on the div, we're checking if we have any string children, okay? So if not, as you will see here, we don't have, so it will go to the h1. It create a big div which contain all its children. Okay, this h1 will only have one string children, meaning just the test, okay, as you see here. But if we look at this p tag, it will have also two children because it has the string here, the a tag here, and another string. So it will have three children, and this function will go, okay, first of all on the div, when we're getting here, it will start, check how many children does it have. If it have more than one, we'll pass it each one of the children, and for each one, it will do the same operation. So basically that's it. And eventually I'm just printing everything just so we have it if none of this happened. So I just want to know. You can also delete this line. Basically that's it. If you're running this Python file, we'll see an example. So we'll just change a couple of things and we will see an example. So here we have the test file. I will stop the debugger and we'll run this file from the terminal. Okay, so now we can just run the file. We're pressing run and debug, Python file, to run this file, and it will print the result. You can see here in the test.json, it's a different file, and it has its children. So if we go to this p tag, it will be the last p tag here, just show you. Okay, so if we see here the p tag, we'll have three children. First of all, it's the string. Second of all, it will be an object that contains the a tag, the attributes, its href, and the content, and another string of the rest of the content. So this is basically how this function works. Very simple, very straightforward. And now I just want to show you a couple more things. I will be happy if you can start this project, maybe help contribute some stuff. Also look at my article to explain everything again. If you need any help, you can write me here a message or in the comments down below, and I'll be more than happy to help you. Also, you have this Jupyter notebook file. You can look, you can use it, modify it, whatever. Have fun.